Some people just aren't meant for success, Marcus. My brother Trevor delivered this verdict with the casual cruelty of someone who had never questioned his place at the top of the world. He was sitting in our parents' living room, still wearing his expensive suit from his job at Meridian Financial, swirling a glass of wine that probably cost more than I made in a week at Burger King. I had just been fired. Again. This time for attitude problems and failure to follow corporate protocols, which translated to refusing to work an unpaid double shift when my manager decided to leave early for his golf game. Maybe it's time to face reality, Trevor continued, his Harvard MBA confidence radiating across the room like heat from a furnace. Not everyone is cut out for the corporate world. There's no shame in settling for something more suitable to your abilities. My mother nodded sympathetically. Trevor's right, dear. Maybe you should consider trade school. Or community college. Something more practical. My father didn't even look up from his newspaper. The same man who had attended every one of Trevor's soccer games, graduation ceremonies, and job celebrations couldn't be bothered to make eye contact with his younger son on what was arguably one of the worst days of my life. I was 22 years old, a college dropout with a resume that read like a tour of entry-level disappointments. Pizza delivery driver, fired for being late, retail sales associate, fired for poor customer service, and now former Burger King employee, fired for having principles, apparently. Trevor, meanwhile, was 25 and already a vice president at one of the city's most prestigious financial firms. Harvard undergraduate, Harvard MBA, corner office with windows overlooking downtown Seattle. He had everything our parents had dreamed of: success, respect, and a salary that made their investment in his education look like the bargain of the century. The difference between us, Trevor said, standing up to refill his wine glass, is that I understand what it takes to succeed in the real world. Strategy, networking, playing the game correctly. You've always been too idealistic. Idealistic. That was Trevor's favorite way of describing my various character flaws. When I quit the pizza job because my manager was stealing tips from drivers, I was being idealistic. When I got fired from retail for refusing to pressure elderly customers into buying extended warranties they didn't need, I was being idealistic. When I walked out of college because I couldn't afford tuition and my professor seemed more interested in publishing papers than teaching students, I was being idealistic. Maybe you're right, I said quietly, setting down my beer, cheap domestic from a can, in sharp contrast to Trevor's boutique wine selection. Maybe I'm just not meant for this. Trevor smiled with satisfaction, the same expression he'd worn since childhood whenever he successfully proved his superiority. The sooner you accept your limitations, the happier you'll be. There's dignity in knowing your place. I left my parents' house that night with $57 in my checking account, no job prospects, and a growing certainty that I was exactly the failure everyone believed me to be. But I also left with something else, a burning determination to prove that success couldn't be measured by Harvard degrees and corner offices alone. The next morning, I did something that would change the trajectory of my entire life. Instead of looking for another dead-end job, I spent my last $50 on business registration fees and officially became the owner of Phoenix Services LLC, a one-man operation with no employees, no office, and no clear business plan. What I did have was a willingness to work harder than anyone else and a complete lack of pride about the type of work I was willing to do. I started by offering handyman services, painting, basic repairs, yard work, moving assistance. Anything people needed done, I would do for a fair price and with absolute reliability. My first client was Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman whose gutters needed cleaning. She paid me $40, and I used 20 of it to buy flyers that I hand-delivered to every house in her neighborhood. By the end of the week, I had 6 more clients. Within a month, I was earning more money than I had at any of my previous jobs. More importantly, I was learning something that my business school-educated brother had never grasped: success isn't about impressive credentials or corner offices. It's about solving problems for people who are willing to pay you to solve them. I reinvested every penny back into the business. Better tools, a used truck, liability insurance, business cards that looked professional instead of photocopied. When clients started asking if I could handle larger projects, I taught myself carpentry, plumbing, and electrical work through YouTube videos and library books. Trevor, meanwhile, was climbing the corporate ladder at Meridian Financial. He moved into a luxury apartment, bought a BMW, and started dating women who looked like they belonged in magazine advertisements. Our parents couldn't stop talking about his success, the business trips, the important meetings, the salary increases. At family dinners, they would ask Trevor about his work with genuine interest and admiration. They would ask me about mine with the polite concern usually reserved for discussing someone's medical condition. "Still doing the handyman thing?" my mother would ask. "Still building my business," I would correct her. "That's nice, dear." "Trevor, tell us about your promotion." By my second year, Phoenix Services had grown beyond handyman work. I was hiring subcontractors for larger projects, bidding on commercial jobs, and slowly building a reputation for quality work at fair prices. I was also learning about business in ways that no MBA program could teach, through trial and error, customer feedback, and the daily reality of profit and loss. Trevor's career was also progressing smoothly. He'd been promoted twice, acquired several important clients, and was being fast-tracked for senior management. Our parents had started dropping hints about grandchildren and whether Trevor's current girlfriend might be the one. "You know," Trevor said during one particularly uncomfortable family dinner, "Marcus could probably do some maintenance work for my building. I could put in a word with the property management company." The condescension in his offer was unmistakable. The successful Harvard MBA throwing a bone to his struggling blue-collar brother. "Thanks," I said, "but I'm pretty busy with my current contracts." He laughed. "Right. Well, the offer stands if you ever need some steady work." What Trevor didn't know was that Phoenix Services had just landed its biggest contract yet, a complete renovation of a small office building downtown. The project would net over $200,000 in revenue and establish us as a serious player in the commercial construction market. But I didn't mention that. Let him think I was still cleaning gutters for $40 a day. By year 5, Phoenix Services employed 15 people and had completed over $1 million in projects. I'd expanded into property management, real estate development, and general contracting. I owned the building where my business was headquartered, drove a truck that was paid for in cash, and had a 6-figure bank account. Trevor was still at Meridian Financial, now as a senior vice president with his own team and a salary that our parents quoted like a sports statistic. He'd married the magazine advertisement girlfriend and bought a house in the suburbs that looked exactly like every other house in their planned community. At 30, I started looking into acquisition opportunities. Phoenix Services had grown large enough to purchase smaller companies, and I was particularly interested in firms that were struggling financially but had good underlying assets. That's when I learned about Meridian Financial's problems. The 2008 financial crisis had hit the industry hard, but Meridian had made particularly poor decisions in the years leading up to the collapse. Risky investments, over-leveraged positions, and a culture of short-term thinking had left them vulnerable when the market turned. By 2010, they were hemorrhaging money and clients. By 2012, they were quietly shopping for buyers or investors who could inject enough capital to keep them solvent. I spent 6 months conducting due diligence on Meridian Financial. Their client list was impressive, their brand had value, and their office building was worth more than their asking price for the entire company. Most importantly, they had something I found irresistible: my brother's complete confidence that they were too important to fail. The acquisition took another year to complete. Lawyers, accountants, regulatory approvals, and financing arrangements. The final purchase price was $12.3 million, financed through a combination of Phoenix Services assets, bank loans, and private investors who believed in my business track record. On a Tuesday morning in September 2013, I walked into the Meridian Financial offices as the new owner. Trevor was in a meeting with potential clients, trying to salvage an account that was threatening to leave due to the company's ongoing instability. I waited in his corner office, the same office he'd described to our parents countless times, with its view of the Seattle skyline and furniture that cost more than most people's cars. When he returned, he found me sitting behind his desk, reading through personnel files. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carrying the automatic authority of someone accustomed to being the most important person in any room. "This is a private office. You'll need to." He stopped mid-sentence when he recognized me. "Marcus, what are you doing here? How did you get past security?" I own the building now, I said calmly, not looking up from the file I was reading. Phoenix Services acquired Meridian Financial this morning. I thought I'd start with a tour of my new company. The color drained from Trevor's face. That's impossible. You're a handyman. I'm a business owner, I corrected him, and as of this morning, I'm your business owner. I opened his personnel file and spread it across the desk. This is interesting reading, Trevor. Your performance reviews are mixed, several client complaints, issues with team management, and a concerning pattern of missed targets over the past 2 years. There's been a recession, he said weakly. Everyone's numbers have been down. Not everyone's, I replied. Some people have been adapting, innovating, finding new ways to serve their clients. Others have been coasting on their past successes and making excuses when reality caught up with them. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the view that had once represented everything Trevor thought I could never achieve. You know what I learned building Phoenix Services? Success isn't about having the right degree or the right connections or the right family name. It's about solving problems, delivering value, and earning trust one client at a time. Trevor was silent, his Harvard MBA confidence evaporating like morning fog. I'm implementing some changes, I continued. New management structure, revised compensation plans, updated performance metrics. Most of the staff will be fine, they're good people who've been poorly led, but some positions will be redundant. You can't fire me, Trevor said, his voice rising with desperation. I'm a senior vice president. I have clients, responsibilities. I corrected him, past tense. Your clients will be reassigned to account managers who actually understand customer service. Your responsibilities will be distributed among people who take them seriously. I walked back to the desk and picked up a termination letter I'd prepared that morning. Effective immediately, your employment with Meridian Financial is terminated. You have 1 hour to clean out your office and return all company property. Trevor stared at the letter like it was written in a foreign language. This is about revenge, he said finally. You're doing this because of what I said years ago. This is petty and vindictive. No, I said, sitting back down in his chair. This is business. Your performance has been declining for 2 years. Your clients have been complaining about service quality. Your team has the lowest morale in the company. I'm making a personnel decision based on objective business criteria. I looked up at him, remembering the young man who had once sat in our parents' living room explaining why some people just weren't meant for success. But you're right about one thing, Trevor. This is about what you said years ago. You taught me an important lesson about limitations and knowing your place. You were absolutely right. Some people just aren't meant for success. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Trevor left that day carrying his personal belongings in a cardboard box, the same way countless other executives had left companies throughout his career. The difference was that this time, he was the one learning about dignity and knowing his place. Over the next 18 months, I rebuilt Meridian Financial from the ground up. New leadership, new systems, new culture focused on long-term relationships instead of short-term profits. The company returned to profitability within a year and started attracting the kind of clients that valued substance over flash. Phoenix Services, meanwhile, continued to grow. The Meridian acquisition had given us access to capital markets and high-net-worth clients who needed everything from property management to complete development projects. We were no longer just a construction company, we were a full-service real estate and financial services firm. 5 years after the acquisition, I received an invitation to speak at a Harvard Business School conference about entrepreneurship and business growth. The irony was perfect. The college dropout who had been dismissed as a failure was being asked to teach MBA students about success. I almost didn't go, but then I realized it was an opportunity to share something important with the next generation of business leaders. Success, I told the audience of Harvard MBAs, isn't about where you went to school or what degree you earned. It's not about your family connections or your starting salary. Success is about serving customers, solving problems, and building value over time. I told them about Phoenix Services, about starting with $50 and a willingness to clean gutters, about learning business through trial and error instead of case studies and theory. The most successful people I know, I concluded, are those who never stopped believing they could learn, grow, and improve. The least successful are those who thought their credentials exempted them from having to prove their worth every single day. After the speech, a young student approached me with a question. Mr. Phoenix, she said, what would you say to someone who's been told they're not meant for success? I thought about Trevor, about my parents, About all the people who had looked at my early failures and concluded that I was destined for mediocrity. I'd say that the people who tell you that are usually trying to convince themselves that success is about luck or privilege instead of work and persistence. Don't let their limitations become your limitations. Today, Phoenix Services employs over 200 people and generates more than $50 million in annual revenue. We own properties in 6 states, manage investment portfolios for dozens of clients, and continue to grow every year. Trevor found another job in financial services, though at a much smaller firm and for significantly less money than he'd been making at Meridian. Our parents still don't quite understand how their failure son became more successful than their Harvard MBA golden child, but they've stopped offering career advice. The corner office where Trevor once explained why some people aren't meant for success is now my office. I kept most of his furniture, but I added one new item, a small plaque on the desk that reads, "Success is not final, failure is not fatal, it is the courage to continue that counts." Sometimes people ask me if I ever regret how I handled Trevor's termination. The answer is simple: I treated him exactly the way any other underperforming employee would be treated. The fact that he was my brother who had once dismissed my potential only made the lesson more poetic. Family should be the people who believe in your dreams, not the ones who try to limit them. Success should be measured by what you build, not what degree you earned or what family you were born into. And sometimes, the greatest satisfaction comes not from proving others wrong, but from proving to yourself that you were always capable of more than anyone imagined. If you've ever been written off as a failure, if you've ever been told you're not meant for success, this story is for you. Remember that success belongs to those who are willing to work for it, not those who think they deserve it. Share this story if you believe that determination beats credentials every time, and subscribe for more stories about overcoming expectations, building something meaningful, and discovering that success looks different than what others might define for you.